As you know, whenever we are executing a function, once I get to the end of that function, I may or may not return a value. We have done some examples so far, but let me show you another one. Let me create another function to write some lines where I'm just going to log line 1 and then log line 2, and then I just want to return the message done. Then I want to execute that function and assign the value to a result, which then I can log that result. If I save that, you can see that I'm getting line 1, line 2, and as a result, I get the message done because this is what I am returning from this function. So I may or may not use a return statement. If I don't, if I save, you can see my code still works, but as a result, what I'm getting is undefined because my function doesn't return anything. I could, however, return a value, but one important thing for us to keep in mind is that usually we put the return statement at the end of the function just because whenever I get to the return statement, I will stop executing whatever I have after that return statement. So let's say I move that one to go here between line 1 and 2. You can see that Visual Studio Code is already helping me. I have a lighter color for this second log. That's just because Visual Studio Code is trying to tell me that this line will never be executed. And if I save my code, you can see that this is the case. I get line 1 and then I get result done. Because I call the function, I execute the first log, and then I return. Once I return, I get that value here, and I just log that information. Anything after that return statement will be executed. And again, I don't even need to return a value. I could simply use the return keyword, and if I save, you can see that again, I get this result undefined, but I still haven't executed this line 2. I just execute the first line, and then I get out of the function. This is why we are going to use the return statement at the end of the function whenever I want to return something. However, there is one scenario where we are going to use the return statement not at the end of the function, and that's for creating this early return pattern. This pattern of coding is really useful for more complex functions. And let me start by showing you an example. It must be a complex function, so bear with me. Let me create a function that will do the following. I want to create a function that will validate if a user is authorized to have access to the system or not. The rules are the user must provide a name and the user must be 18 years old or more. So I'm going to create a function to check if the user is authorized. I need the name and the age. And then I'm going to declare a variable to know if the user is authorized. Then I'm going to check if the name is undefined. Then I'm going to log the message, you must provide your name. And I'm just going to set that authorized is false. Otherwise, if I do have a name, I'm just logging the name hi and the name that the user provided. And then I'm going to check the age. If the user is less than 18, I'm going to log that you are not old enough. And then again, I'm going to say that authorized is false. Otherwise, I'm going to log to the user that I see you are and the age of the user. And now I can authorize the user to have access to the application, so authorized true. At the end, I can return if the user is authorized or not, and then I can use that function whenever I need, and then I can log the result I get from that function. And this is it. This is the scenario where we have, it is a long function, but the idea is that I have a lot of if statements inside my function. Whenever I call that, I'm going to get a result. Let me save that code. And as you can see, I am getting the message, you must provide your name, and the result of the authorization is false. The user is not authorized. If I want to change that, I need to provide name and age, which I'm not providing here. So let me just go ahead and provide, let's say John, age, let's say 17. And if I save, you can see now I get hi John, which means I am providing the name. I am going through this if statement, go inside the else one where I am logging hi and the name, and then I'm validating the age and saying you are not old enough because the age is less than 18. But let's say John is 25. If I save, you can see that now I see you are 25 years old, and then I'm going to return as result true. John is authorized to have access to this application. Everything works as expected. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I am declaring a variable to know if the user is authorized or not. Throughout my application, I am creating some validations, and at the end, I am returning the result of this validation. Everything is the way it's supposed to be. However, I can simplify that function, and the way I simplify that is by using this early return pattern, where I'm going to use in my advantage the idea that whenever a function gets to this return statement, it will no longer execute anything after that. And with that, I will be able to remove a lot of else statements that would be unnecessary for my function if I'm using this pattern. Let me show you how. Let's say here for this example, I am checking if the user is authorized or not. And when I get to this line here, I know that the user didn't provide its name. So I am logging that you must provide your name. And right here, right on line 12, I already know the result of my function. I already know that the user is not authorized. But I still needed to create a block of else statement just so I can have the remaining part of my code. And then on line 26, only on line 26, I am returning that the user is not authorized. But if I do know on line 12 that the user will not be authorized, so instead of setting this variable as false, I could simply change this to say return false. I know the user will not be authorized. I will be returning the result as being false. Everything would still work as expected, but I don't need to make the processor go through other lines just to check everything else because I already know the result. If I save, let me just get rid of these variables here. If I save, you can see that the result is still the same. You must provide your name, and then the result is false. If I do provide the name and the age, save, you can see that it still works and I still get the result is true. So it is still working exactly the same way it was before, except that now I am returning the result as soon as I know what the result of this function is going to be. And then, one advantage, as we have seen, whenever I get to this line, it doesn't matter what else I have after this, none of this is going to be executed either way, which means this else statement is useless because it will never get the else statement. Therefore, if I don't provide this else statement, my function would still work the exactly same way. I am providing a name, I am providing an age, so if I save, you can see I still get the result, but if I don't provide anything and save, you can see you must provide your name, and I never get this hi because I returned. But again, if I am providing a name, that means my name will not be undefined, which means I will never execute this block of code, and I will continue on line 15 where I log hi and the name of the user. So I just got rid of that unnecessary else statement. And I can do the same for age. You can see that I am logging the name and then I validate the age. I log if the user is old enough or not. And then for the authorized, right here again, I already know the result of my function. I already know that the user will not be authorized. That means I could just go ahead and say return false. And if I am returning, if I am using this early return, that means whenever I get to this line, it doesn't matter what I have after that, any of those lines will be executed, which again means I no longer need this else statement. I can get rid of that. I can have this line just after the if, because if I get return, it will not be executed no matter what. Let's make an example. Let's say John is 15. If I save, you can see, hi John, because the name was provided, and then I get to this, you are not old enough, because I am checking the age is less than 18, then I am logging, you are not old enough, and I am returning again an early return. I never get to execute this line, I see you are, I never get to this, and I return the result as being false. And then if the age is greater than 18, so again, let's do 25, you can see everything works as expected because I never get inside this block, I never get inside this block either, which means I continue executing my code where I get to this line. Now I am setting authorized to true and returning authorized, which, if you pay attention, I'm just using authorized now to say that it is true and returning this true, which means I could just go ahead and return true at the end of my function. I don't need this line, which means I don't need this variable to validate if the user is authorized or not. I simply return the value whatever I need, which means if I'm not getting inside here, if I'm not getting inside here, I never execute an early return, and whenever I get to this final line, that means the user is authorized. I can say that the user is authorized. Again, if I save, you can see everything still works as expected. If I say that John is 15, I still get that you are not old enough, return false. If I don't provide anything, save, I still get you must provide your name, result is false. If everything meets the criteria, I get the result true. Same pattern, same result that we are getting before, just a different way of coding. Now I'm just using this early return, which makes my code cleaner to read because I don't need to keep track of the variable. I don't have a lot of if and else's one inside of the other. My code is cleaner, it's easier to read if I get this idea of early return. So that's the idea, and we can use this a lot in our code just to make everything looks better once we finish our function. Also, we have the idea of nested functions and closures.